Okay, everybody, it's me, Ice Fiction, back again with the second episode of my deck list, my custom commander decks. Um, Being that this one is a lot of cards, and a lot of the cards are a lot of rating, I'm gonna do this one a little bit different, and I'm gonna do a shortened video. Just kind of going over my thought process behind building the deck, and also just kind of going over kind of the staples of the deck itself. Trying to get the videos to be a little bit shorter. I did attempt to record this video yesterday. It didn't save whenever I recorded it. It was, by the time I was done doing all the actual talking of everything, going over each individual card in the deck, it was like an hour and 20 minutes long, and I was like, that's way too long. So it's a good thing that it didn't save, so we can go through and shorten it up a little bit. Today's deck is what I call my wall of planeswalkers, right? In total, this deck has 37 lands, 9 artifacts, 13 creatures, 3 instances, 1 sorcery, 34 planeswalkers, 5 enchantments. I do have 2 creatures that turn into planeswalkers, so that the creature stat and the planeswalkers stat is a little off, not by much. This whole deck is nothing but planeswalkers, pretty much. There's a handful of creatures, a handful of mana rocks. I have 9 artifacts. Out of those 9, 8 of them are mana rocks in some way, shape, or form. And there's a very specific reason why the deck is portioned like this. Okay, so the commander is nevinyrral, urborg, tyrant. He's 3, a white, a blue, and a black. And it's got hexproof from artifacts, creatures, and enchantments. When nevinyrral urborg tyrant enters the battlefield, create a tap 2/2 black zombie creature token for each creature that died this turn. When nevinyrral dies, you may pay 1. When you do, destroy all artifacts, creatures, and enchantments. This guy is a board wipe for everything other than planeswalkers and lands, which is why the deck has 34 planeswalkers and 37 lands. I did kind of go all out on this deck. I have every emblem that my planeswalkers can create, and I also have every token that my planeswalkers create. Kind of the basic mana rock scenario. You have Azorius Locket, Azorius Signet, Arcane Signet, Dimir Signet, Thrain Dynamo, Dimir Locket, the Soul Ring. It's a staple in every commander deck. So Soul Ring, it's in every one, almost every one. Hedron Archive is a worse Soul Ring, kind of. Soul Ring costs 1 mana, Hedron Archive costs 4. And then I have one that is not a it is not a mana rock. Let's turn this light off. That way there's not as much of a glare. And that is the Chain Veil. The Chain Veil is the only artifact in this deck that is not a mana rock. And the reason why it's in the deck is because it reads, at the beginning of your end step, if you didn't activate a loyalty ability of a planeswalker this turn, you lose 2 life. You pay 4, tap it. For each planeswalker you control, you may activate one of its loyalty abilities once this turn, as though none of its abilities have been activated this turn. With the Chain Veil on the battlefield, you can double up your triggers and your loyalty abilities on your planeswalkers. The whole purpose of this deck is to have big scary planeswalkers on the battlefield and be able to get them to their ulti as quick as possible. Enchantments, we do have a handful of enchantments. Ghostly Prison, probably one of the most notable ones in here. Creatures can't attack you unless their controllers pays 2 mana for each creature they control attacking you. I also have Oath of Kaya. Oath of Kaya says when Oath of Kaya enters the battlefield, it deals 3 damage to any target and you gain 3 life. When an opponent attacks a planeswalker, specifically the planeswalkers, with 1 or more creatures, Oath of Kaya deals 2 damage to that player and you gain 2 life. It's in here for a deterrent to prevent people from wanting to attack my planeswalkers. You also have Oath of Teferi in here. You may activate loyalty abilities of planeswalkers you control twice each turn rather than only once. So you have Oath of Teferi, the Chain Veil. You get 3 chances at doing your planeswalker abilities. And then Oath of Gideon creates 2 1/1 white core ally creature tokens. Each planeswalker you control enters the battlefield with an additional counter on it. And then Oath of Liliana, anytime you cast a planeswalker on your end step, you create a 2/2 black zombie creature token. There's not a whole lot of creatures in here, so your biggest defense mechanism is creating the tokens, right? You have that core allies, the zombie tokens that both Oath of Liliana and your commander creates, Thopters, Vampire Knights, soldiers. There's quite a few cards that create a 1/1 soldier. You have a card that creates a 5/5 demon with flying, 0/1 thralls, 2/2 spirits with vigilance, and then some copy tokens as well that allow you to copy stuff. We'll go through the handful of creatures that we have in here. I'm going to start with Windborn Muse. Windborn Muse is very similar to the Ghostly Prison, except for it's on a creature. It says creatures can't attack you unless their controller pays 2 for each creature they control that's attacking you. So you have Windborn Muse out, you have Ghostly Prison out. That's 4 mana that they have to pay in order to attack you. The next one is the Vinia Azorius Renegade. Each opponent can't cast non-creature spells. That's very important because a lot of people try to misplay this, and when I play this card, they think that it's any spell, but it's specifically non-creature spells. Each opponent can't cast non-creature spells with converted mana cost greater than the number of lands that player controls. So if they want to try to play a Arcane Signet off of a turn 1 Soul Ring, they can't cast it using their Soul Ring because they don't have that mana. Same thing with like pretty much anything that's not a creature. If you don't have that amount of lands for that mana cost, you can't cast it. And then it also says when an opponent casts a spell, if no mana was spent to cast it, counter that spell. So that's all your free mana rocks like Mana Vault, Mana Crypt, Chrome Mox I think is a free one. There's quite a few, right? It counters that. It also gets around triggers like Cascade, like Discover, anything where you're casting stuff for free. This counters that spell. It comes in handy if people play it right. So you have to make sure you're on top of your game whenever you play that. The next one is probably one of my favorite creatures in the deck. Talion the Kindly Lord. It says, as Talion the Kindly Lord enters the battlefield, choose a number between 1 and 10. Whenever an opponent casts a spell with mana value, power, or toughness equal to the chosen number, that player loses 2 life and you draw a card. It is stated that drawing cards wins the game, right? The person who draws the most wins the game. So this is card draw, but it also is pinging your opponents for damage. This is really good if you can get it out kind of early. And choose a number like 2 or 3. There's so many Magic cards that have that cost 2 or 3 mana, and or creatures that have 2 or 3 as the power or toughness. You can get a lot of triggers off of Talion. It is awesome. Next one, I'm gonna go with Grand Abolisher. Grand Abolisher. During your turn, your opponents can't cast spells or activate abilities of artifacts, creatures, or enchantments. This means that none of your stuff can get countered. This means that you don't take or you don't get the triggers off of like Ristic Study that people may play or something along those lines. So this is a very handy card to play. The next one, Urborg Champion. Protection from black and from red. Whenever another creature enters the battlefield, you may gain 1 life. This gives you a lot of life gain, depending on when it's played and depending on what kind of decks you're playing against. If you're playing against a deck like Kranko, Mob Boss, where they're constantly creating the 1/1 Goblin tokens, you can gain a lot of life. There's quite a few other tokeny decks that this plays really well against. Anake Oathkeeper. This is kind of like the Oath of Kaya. Kind of like it's not quite the same. Creatures can't attack planeswalkers you control unless their controller pays 1 for each creature they control that's attacking a planeswalker you control. Again, this is just in here to kind of deter people from trying to attack you. The next 2 that I'm going to go over are partners. So you have Timon, Youthful Geist. It's flying. At the beginning of each combat, tap up to 1 target creature. And then its partner is Rhonda, Geist Avenger. It has Vigilance, and whenever a creature an opponent controls becomes tapped, if it isn't being declared an attacker, put a +1/+1 counter on Rhonda, Geist Avenger. So every combat, when you have Timon on the battlefield, regardless of whether or not the players are going into combat, you still have to do this trigger. It is not a May ability. You have to tap up to 1 target creature. And then Rhonda just consistently is getting buffed up. She starts as a 3/3 and very quickly can become out of control. I think the highest I had her up to was like a 25/25 with Vigilance. It is crazy at how fast that can go. The next 2 are the 2 that kind of transform into Planeswalkers. Liliana, Heretical Healer. Whenever another non-token creature you control dies, exile Liliana, Heretical Healer, return her to the battlefield, transformed under Azurna's control. If you do, create a 2/2 black zombie creature token. She transforms into Liliana, Defiant Necromancer. It's a Planeswalker. Each player discards a card for +2. -X, return target non-legendary creature card with mana value X from your graveyard to the battlefield. -8, you get an emblem with whenever a creature dies, return it to the battlefield under your control at the beginning of the next end step. That also affects other people, other opponents' creatures. When they die, they come to your battlefield. Keothian, Hero of Akros. At the end of combat, if Keothian, Hero of Akros, and at least 2 other creatures attacked this combat, exile him, return him to the battlefield, transformed under Azurna's control. He turns into another Planeswalker. That is Gideon Battleforge. Gideon Battleforge. He gives, for +1, until your next turn, target creature gains indestructible. Untap that creature. He has a 0 ability of becoming a 4/4 human soldier with indestructible and prevent all damage that would be dealt to him this turn. And +2, up to 1 target creature an opponent controls attacks Gideon Battleforge during its controller's next turn if able. So he just makes people target him. The next two, Sunlit Hopelet and Monk of the Open Hand, both of these two creatures, they're in the deck because planeswalkers in here search for them as long as they're not in your hand. You could search your graveyard and your library for it, and then you can put it into your hand for one of them, and the other one goes onto the battlefield. So those are the creatures that I have. Instants and sorceries. I have 2 counter spells in here, which is Counterspell and Tail's End, and then I have a instant that I love. It's called Comeuppance. Prevent all damage that would be dealt to you and planeswalkers you control this turn by sources you don't control. If damage from a creature source is prevented this way, Comeuppance deals that much damage to that creature. If damage from a non-creature source is prevented this way, Comeuppance deals that much damage to the source's controller. This basically just counters damage and kills creatures that are attacking you, and also if somebody has deal 3 damage to any target or something like that, it deals 3 damage to that person instead. And then the last one is Deploy the Gatewatch. It says, look at the top 7 cards of your library, put up to 2 planeswalker cards from among them onto the battlefield, put the rest on the bottom of your library in random order. One thing that I have found with playing this deck for as long as I've been playing it, it is very easy to get mana locked. A lot of the planeswalkers in the deck are expensive to cast. They cost a lot of mana, let alone your commander, which costs 6 mana to cast it right off the rip. It's very easy to get mana locked in this deck. Okay, with Deploy the Gatewatch, you can get 2 free planeswalkers without having to pay their mana cost, which can help you depending on which ones you get. I've gone through the deck quite a few times with that, and there's like a 78% chance that you're hitting at least one, right? I've done it probably, I don't know, I'd say 45, 50 different times, and I might have had like 3 out of those 45 that I didn't hit at least one planeswalker, right? Majority of the time you're hitting 2 or more because there are so many in here, but occasionally you do whiff and get nothing. So we'll go through some of these planeswalkers. I'm not going to go through all of them because there are so many. I'll go through some of my favorite ones, right? The first one right off the rip is Tevesh Zat, Doom of Fools. He's a 5 mana planeswalker. Comes in with 4 loyalty counters. +2, create 2/0/1 Black Thaw creature tokens. +1, you may sacrifice another creature or planeswalker. If you do, draw 2 cards. Then draw another card if the sacrifice permanent was a commander. And then -10, gain control of all commanders. Put all commanders from the command zone onto the battlefield under your control. I love this card in this deck. A lot of people hate playing against this card because it steals their commanders too if you can get it to 10, which, to be honest with you, isn't that difficult. Not a lot of people attack it. You have a better chance of somebody trying to counter it when you try to cast it. But once it's on the battlefield, most people don't target it. At least in the play groups that I've played against or played in, not a lot of people target that. This one here is just absolutely broken. I've only played this a handful of times because of how broken it is. It's Gideon, Champion of Justice. It's 2 and 2 white for 4 loyalty counters, and it says +1, put a loyalty counter on Gideon, Champion of Justice for each creature target opponent controls. So you plus it 1, and then you get an additional loyalty counter for each creature an opponent controls. 0, until end of turn, Gideon, Champion of Justice becomes a human soldier creature with power and toughness equal to the number of loyalty counters on him, and gains indestructible. He's still a planeswalker. Prevent all damage that would be dealt to him this turn. And then the reason why I say this is broken is -15, exile all other permanents. This is a legitimate board wipe for everything other than Gideon, Champion of Justice, right? And it is so easy to get him to 15. Most of the time, the turn that he comes out, you're adding 5 to 7 loyalty counters, if not more, right off the rip. It is so easy to get him to 15, and then you exile all permanents. It is broken. A lot of people hate that card because it is a legit board wipe, and if you get it to 15 and exile everything, most of the time people are going to concede and quit right off the rip. The next one that I love is Sorin Grim Nemesis. He costs 4, a white and a black, +1. Reveal the top card of your library. Put that card into your hand. Each opponent loses life equal to its converter mana cost. So you're drawing a card and also dealing damage equal to its mana value. It comes in really handy. It also allows you to destroy creatures. -X, Sorin Grim Nemesis deals X damage to target creature or planeswalker, and you gain X life. So you can kill off creatures that you don't like being on the battlefield. And then the -9 is also kind of broken. It did win me a game one time. I was playing against a life gain deck, and it says -9, put a number of 1/1 black vampire knight creature tokens with lifelink onto the battlefield equal to the highest life total among all players. I was playing against a life gain deck, and they were up to like 120 life. I created 120 1/1 black vampire knight creature tokens, and when I did that, they were like, there's nothing I can do, and scooped. So it does come in handy. There's quite a few cards similar to that, quite a few planeswalkers in here similar to that, that kind of give you that destroying of creatures. Another one is Elspeth's Sun's Champion. +1, create 3 1/1 white soldier creature tokens, so you're gaining blockers. -3, destroy all creatures with power 4 or greater. Again, it's essentially a board wipe unless you have somebody who's playing a bunch of big beefy dinosaurs or something like that. And then -7, you get an emblem with creatures you control, get +2/+2 and have flying. If you happen to get it to the -7, you get an emblem, and now all your creatures are flying. Emblems are impossible to interact with. You can't counter them, you can't destroy them, they're just there. I think there's one card in Magic's history that allows you to essentially restart the game, in which case it'll get rid of the emblems, but otherwise there's not a whole lot that you can do with it. The next one that I love is Jace Beleren. +2, each player draws a card, so it's friendly. You're giving everybody card draw. -1, target player draws a card, and then -10, target player mills 20 cards. If you can get it to the -10, it is kind of a game ender, depending on how late in the game you actually have it. But I love it because you're creating, or you're giving everybody that card draw, which makes you less of a threat. This next one, Liliana Vess. +1, target player discards a card. -2, which is pretty much the only reason why it's on here or in this deck. Search your library for a card, then shuffle your library, put it on top. There's a tutor card that's very similar to this. I don't remember if it's Vampiric Tutor or Demonic Tutor or Grim Tutor, but regardless, there's a tutor card that does that same exact thing. So this is basically one of those. It does have a -8 ability of put all creature cards in all graveyards onto the battlefield under your control. I don't really care about that because I want to be able to tutor for cards that I need at the specific times that I need it. Here's another one, Elspeth Tyrell. I love this one in here for its -5 effect. Destroy all other permanents except for lands and tokens. Because this deck is a heavy token generator with creating tokens on a lot of these planeswalkers, it destroys everything other than the tokens that you're creating and lands, which is better than the Gideon Champion Justice, where you're destroying everything or exiling everything. The next one, Jace the Mind Sculptor. A lot of these planeswalkers, especially this one, are in here for its ulti. -12, exile all cards from target player's library. Then that player shuffles his or her hand into his or her library. So you exile somebody's library, and then whatever cards they have in their hand, that becomes their library. That is a game ender. Not a lot of people like that. Again, a lot of these planeswalkers that I chose to be in this deck have some type of crazy ulti like that just almost for sure wins the game right off the rip. Right? If I can get it to their ulti, it's pretty much game over from that point forward. Soren Markov, it doesn't have the ulti, but its -3 ability is target opponent's life total becomes 10. So if you're playing against somebody who's playing a life gain deck, with Soren Markov, you can make their life total 10, and it makes it a lot harder for them to stay in the game, because at 10 life, they just become the target, and everybody is throwing stuff at them to kill them off. We won't do that one. We won't do that one. Here's one. Teferi Timeless Voyager. Each creature target opponent controls phases out until the end of your next turn. They can't phase in. That gives, if you have somebody who is definitely a threat at the table and they're, this close to winning, and the rest of the table is panicking and trying to find a solution to it, that is a solution. If you can get Teferi Timeless Voyager to the -8 and you make all of their creatures phase out and they're wide open for an entire turn rotation, it is crazy at how quickly people will get upset, mad, irritated, salty, whatever words you want to use whenever you do that. Let's see. Here's another one that I put in here specifically for its ulti. Vraska Scheming Gorgon. -10 until end of turn. Creatures you control gain Death Touch, and whenever this creature deals damage to an opponent, that player loses the game. Again, if you can get it to the ulti and people don't have any way to block your flying off of that emblem that you get, you win the game just like that. You know what I mean? Because as soon as those creatures deal damage, you win the game. Another one that's in here, this one is in here because of its static ability, not necessarily anything that it actually does other than its static ability, which is Obnixilis, the Hate Twisted. Says whenever an opponent draws a card, Obnixilis, the Hate Twisted, deals 1 damage to that player. There's a lot of ways, a lot of planeswalkers that allow people to draw cards or target player to draw cards. With Obnixilis on the battlefield, it pings them every time you draw a card, or every time they draw a card. And then it also has a -2 destroy target creature. Its controller draws 2 cards. So you can destroy a creature and make them draw 2 cards, which will ping them for 2 life. Here's another one that helps with your planeswalkers. Teferi, Temporal Archmage. -10, you get an emblem with you may activate loyalty abilities of planeswalkers you control on any player's turn anytime you could cast an instant spell. So that gives you interactions with your planeswalkers on other people's turns and not just yours. Here's another one that I really love. It's kind of hard to read because I really love the artwork on it, but it's Kaya, Intangible Slayer. It has hexproof. +2, each opponent loses 3 life and you gain 3 life. You're pinging people and you're gaining life at the same time. 0, you draw 2 cards, then each opponent may scry 1. Again, card draw is your best friend. If you draw cards, you're more likely to draw the lands that you might need, or maybe you're looking for an artifact or a creature or one of the enchantments or something. It allows you to get to that point. And then it also has -3, exile target creature or enchantment. If it wasn't an aura, create a token that's a copy of it, except it's a 1/1 white spirit creature with flying in addition to its other types. So this is you're destroying creatures and enchantments, and then you get a copy of said enchantments and creatures. Enchantments are kind of hard to play with, or kind of hard to interact with. Nevinyrral is a good counter for enchantments, and so is Kaya, Intangible Slayer. Here's another one that's in here for its ulti. Jace, Unraveler of Secrets, -8. You get an emblem with whenever an opponent casts his or her first spell each turn, counter that spell. It gives you a free counter spell. It also makes your opponents waste mana in order to play anything. Here's another one that synergizes really well with that Omnixilus, the Hate Twisted. It's Jace, Memory Adept. -7, any number of target players each draw 20 cards. So if you have Omnixilus, the Hate Twisted out, and you can get Jace, Memory Adept to its ulti of -7 or above it, you're dealing 20 damage to each opponent. It is crazy at how well those 2 cards synergize together. Here's another really good one that I love its ulti. I've not been able to get this one to its ulti yet, but I would love to be able to. Tezzeret, Artifice Master. -9, you get an emblem with, at the beginning of your end step, search your library for a permanent card, put it onto the battlefield, then shuffle. You're getting free permanents. Artifacts, planeswalkers, creatures, enchantments, anything that is free is the best that you can do. Here's another one that I really like having in this deck, only because it is kind of broken, not quite. Grandmaster of Flowers. As long as Grandmaster of Flowers has 7 or more loyalty counters on him, he is a 7/7 dragon god creature with flying and indestructible. So if you can get him to 7, which takes 4 turns depending, he's a 7/7 dragon with flying and indestructible, which means he's hard to get around, he's hard to destroy. Here's another kind of staple in a lot of black decks. Any deck that really runs swamps. Liliana of the Dark Realms. +1, search your library for a swamp card, reveal it, put it into your hand, then shuffle. If you happen to have Liliana on the battlefield and you're running out of lands. If you're running out of mana or you need more mana, let's say you only have 2 swamps on the battlefield and you're trying to play Sorin Markov, which takes 3 black pips. With Liliana, you can search for a land card or a swamp card and get it to your hand so you can play it. And then a lot of people like it because of its ulti. -6, you get an emblem with swamps you control have tap, add 4 black mana to your mana pool. So basically, each individual swamp taps for 4. It is absurd at how quick that can get to 6 and then ulti. It is really nice. Here's another one that I like. I won't do these two. I'll just do the last 2 that I have here. Jace the Living Guild Pack. Come on, camera. There it is. Jace the Living Guild Pack. -8. Each player shuffles his or her hand and graveyard into his or her library. You draw 7 cards. Yes, you're putting everybody's graveyard into their library. However, your opponents have to top deck. You get to draw 7 cards, which means you get a fresh new hand, but your opponents only get to draw 1 card each turn, unless there's effects on the battlefield that allow you to draw more. In this deck, unless you're playing cards like the Jace Bellerand, which allows everybody to draw cards, you're going up against decks that are going to be top decking at that point from that point forward, which slows them down tremendously. Only having 1 card that they can play each turn from that point forward really slows the game down and allows you to go big and win the game. And then the last planeswalker in here, this is kind of like the Obnixilis, the Hate Twisted. This one's called the Wanderer. It's only in here for its static ability of prevent all non-combat damage that would be dealt to you and other permanents you control. So that card prevents cards like Blasphemous Act from destroying your creatures, or anything that like Lightning Strike or a Braid or Shock or Strangle, anything that deals damage that's not combat, right? This prevents all that non-combat damage to both your planeswalkers and your creatures, and it really slows the game down because it's protecting your board state. So that's all the planeswalkers. There's a bunch more in here. I only went over a handful. If you would like the deck list, just let me know in the comments and I can give you the full deck list. Lands that I run a lot of dual lands now, right? When I first built this deck, I ran 13 of each lands, just basic lands, right? So I had 13. I lied to you. I'm sorry. I ran 13 plains, 13 swamps, and 11 islands, right? So it's 13, 13, and 11. And now I'm down to 8 swamps, 8 plains, and 8 islands, and then the rest of the cards are dual lands, like Waterfront District, Azorius Chauchery. It enters the battlefield tapped. When it does, it bounces a land, and you can tap it, add a white and a blue. Azorius Guildgate taps for a white or a blue. Scored Barrens, Tranquil Cove, Restless Reef, Sunken Hollow, Choked Estuary, Prairie Stream, just a bunch. And then probably the best land card that I have in here is going to be the Arcane Sanctum. It does enter the battlefield tapped. However, it can tap to add 1 mana of any color that I need, white, blue, or black. It comes in really handy, especially going from getting mana locked almost every time I play it to now I have the mana. The mana base is fixed. It's still not perfect by any means, but it is fixed. for the most part. So that's my Planeswalker deck. It's nice having a board wipe on a stick. You could kill it pretty easily. There's quite a few Planeswalkers in here that can interact with it and kill it. Pay 1 mana, destroy everything other than your Planeswalkers. It does come in handy, and it is a deterrent. You do become the threat very quickly with this deck, especially with some of the Planeswalkers that are in here, and also having that board wipe on a stick. Typically you get targeted, but I love this deck. It's got more Planeswalkers in it than the Planeswalker precons that have come out. So, but yeah, that's that. If you like this deck list, just let me know. I can put it in the comments below. And also, like and subscribe and follow for more content similar to this. I'll be putting gameplay from me playing online, and then also going over the rest of the decks that I have. I really hope you like this, and I will look forward to seeing you guys in the next video, or talking to you guys in the next video. See you later.